In this video, how to take your keto cooking to the next level. Eat. Good eat. Good dog. Is that good? Yum. Yum. Good dog. Good eat. Good girl.
To prepare stuffed steak and egg stackers, you will need 5 ounces of raw uncured bacon, 5 ounces of cooked pork, chicken thigh, ground beef, or meat of your choice, 10 ounces of raw grass-fed steak, 4 eggs, 1 avocado, 1 onion, and mineral salt. Depending on the recipe, we alternate between Redmond real salt and Celtic Sea Salt. Both are leading standards in the health industry, and you can purchase them at supersetyourlife.com.
Step 1. Heat a large egg pan to high. We're actually going to cook everything in this pan, and since it's quite a bit of food, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the lack of dishes that you're going to have to do after this. So this is one of those convenient tips, and with the fatty cuts of meat first. Don't be afraid of the fat. We're going to use that fat to cook the rest of the meals. And all of this fat that you see from these meats that we're going to be eating, minus the avocado, are very, very bioavailable. I feel great when I'm running on animal fats. I just love it. It feels like I'm giving my body fuel. Okay, so that's why we're starting with the fatty cuts first, which brings us to step 2, which is adding meats starting with the fattiest cuts. And then we're going to add the leaner cuts later. So the way that I do it, and again, there's no right or wrong way to make this concoction, but I just pick and choose the meats that were already in the bowl and eyeball what looks the fattiest, and then whatever's leanest, I kind of save that for last, especially the steak. I really don't want to overcook the steak. And remember, if you're not consuming carbs in your diet like me on this contest prep, don't be afraid of the fats, because that is your fuel. You got to replace that fuel with something. Fuel can come from either protein, it can come from fat, or it can come from carbs. And of course, if you have carbs in your system, your body's going to want to prefer those carbs. But if you give it no choice to use either fat or protein, your body's really smart and it figures it out, and it learns how to use these types of fuel to be able to replace the carbs that your body was used to. Okay, so now I'm adding the leaner stuff, and that would be the beef, that would be the chicken, and the pork. It doesn't really matter what meats you use. And that's the nice thing about this, is you can just throw everything together. You'll notice that I started adding the meats before the burner was even hot too. And what that does is it cooks the bacon at a real nice low heat to make sure that it doesn't burn. And with that slow cooking, it brings out the fat, I've found, more effectively than throwing it onto a hot burner. Adding in the salt now, wherever I think it needs it. Typically, you're not going to need to add salt to bacon, because all the bacon that I've been able to find at the stores already has sodium in it. We're adding Celtic Sea Salt, making sure we get that iodine in there. If you haven't listened to our podcast on the story of Celtic Sea Salt, I'm going to put a link to that in the description. Make sure you listen to that one. It's a heartwarming story. It's really inspiring too to young entrepreneurs. It's a fantastic product. It's been around for decades. And we had the honor of interviewing the founder of the company on our show. So you can find that on the supersetyourlife.com podcast, and that is available on all audio platforms. And of course, here's the exciting part. We're adding in the steak, favorite part of the meal. And you really got to move quick when you're adding the steak, because if you like your steak like I do, which is very, very red, almost kind of still moving in the middle, like blue, if you know what I mean. And this video is sped up too, obviously, but I am moving pretty quickly. And I'm only going to cook one side of it, you'll notice. Okay, so we're covering the tops of the pieces of steak that are pre-cut with Celtic Sea Salt, turning them over just for a second, and then I'm just going to stir it all together, get those juices all blending together. Oh my gosh, this is so good. I mean, why do you need carbs in your diet if you're eating food that tastes this good? This is how we're making the carnivore keto contest prep sustainable and healthy and fun and enjoyable. Okay, so that brings us to step 3, which is to drain as much of the fat as you can. But you don't need to freak out about it. You don't need to obsess about how much fat is drained. Just drain as much as you can. That's the one thing that really stinks about the carnivore diet is it's hard to track fat. It really, really is. I guess you could weigh it if you really, really wanted to, but this has been working so far, and so this is what we've been doing. I'm grabbing just a piece of trash. Actually, I'm using a Hydra EAA used supplement bottle. And so this is a pro tip. We save all of our supplement bottles for this reason. Okay, so that brings us to step 4, which is to place meats into a large dinner bowl. And this is what we're you can eat them out of this if you really want, or if you want to be fancy, you can display it like I did, really for the video. But to be completely honest, usually I just throw everything together in the bowl and eat it just like it is. Okay, so you're seeing whatever is left over of the fat. There's not a whole lot left, but there is definitely enough to be able to cook the onions without burning them. And that brings us to step number 5, which is to space the onions evenly across the pan. Play around with how you cut them too. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I like to do it in a way that there's 2 layers. That's what I've found to be the sweet spot in slicing these onions, is to have 2 layers so that it can cook all the way through. But it's also strong enough to be able to hold together. If you do just one layer, they get a little floppy depending on how fast you cook it. So this is what's been working for us. And then the little pieces that we're not going to fill any food with, I just throw them in next to them. I mean, better that than going to waste. And those are a nice little treat too. So now we're left with a whole bunch of little pieces of onions, and these I just sprinkle around. Sometimes I put them inside of the onions if I feel like it. Sometimes I space them out throughout. It doesn't really matter. As long as it gets in my tummy, that's all I really care about. Something I get asked pretty often is, why do I include avocados and onions in my diet? And when it comes to onions, avocados are high in potassium and they're a wonderful source of fat. But when it comes to onions, it's just something that I like. It's just something that I prefer. And I don't see anything wrong with that. Doesn't knock me out of ketosis, and they're very, very low calorie. Adds a lot of flavor to the otherwise meal that is just meat. Okay, so that is step number 6 now that you're watching, which is to top the onions with the meat and the oils and the juices from the bowl. So if you see what I did, I drained whatever was still left in the bowl all over the onions to give them even more flavor. And then I'm picking and choosing, especially the fattiest cuts, to put in first. Anything that doesn't look like it was cooked through all the way, minus the steak. I mean, because come on, we got to have rare steak. But if we're talking bacon and stuff, I mean, like, you definitely want that cooked all the way through. I'm holding it close so you can see a better angle on it. But I'm just stuffing it inside of the onions, and then when by the time that I put the eggs over top, that oil is gonna help the eggs cooked. And oh my gosh, this flavor combination is just out of this world. Back to the avocados. It's not an animal fat, and so I would never take it personally before a workout, but they're very, very high in potassium, higher than meats per ounce. I've done the research on that, and so that's one reason why I've had an avocado every single day through this entire prep, because I really need to make sure that my electrolytes are in check. Okay, so step 8 is to carefully fill the onions with cage-free eggs. Cannot stress the importance enough of your eggs being from a quality source. You can tell a difference. It's night and day, and there's a big difference in the way that taste too. Not just in how yellow the yolks are, but the darker the yolk, typically the better quality product it is, the better quality meat that it is, the more natural that it is. Pro tip, you'll notice that I'm putting the eggshells in the same little garbage tub that I poured the grease into. Okay, step 9 is to stuff onions with meat to fill. So wherever you look at the onions and the egg didn't fill it up all the way, that's when I put the leaner cuts of meat, basically whatever I have left, in the top to fill it, just to hold it together, because when you flip it, you don't want it to fall apart. And so that makes it a nice, solid chunk of carnivore keto amazingness. Another pro tip, try not to break the yolks. I mean, unless you like hard yolks, but I like my yolks to be runny. It's kind of like a condiment. And if you break the yolk, then, well, I guess the yolk's on you. Dad joke, sorry about that one. Okay, so that brings us to step 10, which is to flip the stuffed onions and remove the excess onions. So you'll notice that I'm taking the onions that look like they're ready out, putting them into the bowl with the rest of the meats. And the rest of the meats aren't going to be really part of the meal or anything. It's more of a byproduct, but everything is weighed out in exactly what I know that I need to be eating. So if you're making this for some friends or some family, then, you know, that's food that it can go to your dog. It can go on the side. You can do something with it, but this is the main course. Oh yeah, that is ready. See that? Nailed it. Absolutely perfect. That's how you know that it's perfect. It's not draining out of the bottom. Oh, I effed up that one though. See, looks like the yolk's on you there. So I'm taking out everything besides the 4 pieces that are going to be the main course, putting them on top so that I can see them nice and clearly for the video. Nice and displayed. Okay, that brings us to step number 11, which is to top off the feast with the stuffed onions. And that's pretty much it. I mean, even those little pieces that you see that are still in the pan, I'm going to scrape those out. They're nice and crunchy, and probably just throw them on the side. There's absolutely nothing that you see here that is going to be wasted, besides the eggshells and a little bit of grease. In the Milton household, we use everything. We treat animals with respect, whether it's our pet, whether it's an animal that we're eating. Everything is used for something. If you make it, please tag Colt Milton on Instagram. That is COLTMILTON. Share this video with a friend. Thank you so much for watching. Love you all so much. God bless you. God bless this food to your body when you eat it. Have a good one. To your gains, to your health. Thanks for watching.